Week one of the 2025 college football season has all but come and gone, and we're here to unpack it all. I'm Giovanni Heater alongside Raza Umarani. Welcome in to Got It Covered. And Raza, we got one more game on tap tonight. Of course, TCU and North Carolina as we open the Bill Belichick era, but week one had a lot of hype going into it. And I think in ways that we didn't expect, it lived up to all of that hype and more.
Yeah, it felt like old school, kind of old school football. And it felt like I was back in 2010, 2011 watching these teams. So much of what has gone into the hype around the season was like big name quarterbacks, because that's been what college football has been about in the last several years. You've got Bryce Young, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, all these, Joe Burrow, Tua, Baker, Kyler types. Really what this weekend was about was like hard-nosed, smash-mouth football, line up, meet me in the A-gap, run the ball, defense-type ball. And that is, I think, what was so cool about it, right? Is that these matchups delivered, but so many of them were expected to be these like offensive firepower displays. But no, it was like defenses were coming and hitting you in the mouth. So I love that, because that is my favorite brand of football. So it definitely lived up to the hype in a way that almost exceeded it for me, because I really enjoyed seeing this style of play.
Well, we made our predictions going into the week, and you did a little bit better than I did, but I had an atrocious performance as far as picking games and picking spreads and picking bets. All of it kind of fell apart as the weekend continued.
I mean, sometimes you're sharp, sometimes you're square. This was a bit of a boxy weekend for you. I mean, I didn't have the greatest week either. Like, I think I had a really good read on the Ohio State Texas game. I didn't think it would be as low scoring and defensive as it was, but obviously that was the nature of that game. I confidently came on here and said Bama's going to wax Florida State.
We both did.
Clemson's going to beat LSU. Notre Dame's going to beat Miami, and that wasn't great for me either. So like, yeah, I think, of the 6 picks we made, I think I went like 3-3 or something, right? I got like, Ohio State, South Carolina, and Tennessee. I read those games pretty well, but then the other 3, like, not exactly what I expected. So I obviously thought that the Notre Dame, Miami, and the LSU Clemson games would be close. It just didn't exactly play out the way I thought it would, but we're going to break it all down.
We're going to break it all down. Let's go game by game, and let's start with the marquee matchup of really maybe the season, at least in the early scope. And it was between Ohio State and Texas. Longhorns go into Columbus. I picked them to win it. You did not, and you were correct, because Ohio State was able to hold down home fort at the shoe, 14-7. What a defensive slugfest here. And I think my biggest takeaway from this game, everyone's going to sit here and say, Arch Manning this, Arch Manning that. He's terrible. He's this. All the expectations. Kiss the Heisman goodbye. I think this is a lot more about Ohio State and a lot less about Arch and Texas. Ohio State's defense is legit and probably the best defensive unit in the entire country. And I think it's a lot more about the Buckeyes than it is the Longhorns.
I agree with you. Obviously, Arch did not play well. Like, we can get that out of the way, right? He had a completion percentage just north of 50%. Texas didn't score until there was 3.5 minutes left. He missed a lot of layups. He missed some key throws down the stretch when they had a chance to get back in the game and either tie or take the lead on that last offensive possession that they had. He looked mechanically unsound and just very jittery. I don't know if it was the moment. I don't know if it was the level of competition. I don't know if it was the environment in Columbus. He just never looked comfortable. But to your point, we know that Arch is this extremely talented quarterback. You're not the number one quarterback in your class for no reason. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's because his last name is Manning. Like, yes, but he has the play to back it up. He has the tape to back it up. Also, Julian Sayin was a top 3-4 quarterback in his class. He didn't play particularly well either, but it's because of Ohio State's defense. I think game ball has to go to Matt Patricia in his first game, replacing 1000%. Jim Knowles. Not easy shoes to fill, right? This is a championship defense from a year ago that lost so many of its best players. But when you return guys like Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, who had an insane game, CJ Hicks, who made play after play after play, like impact guys at every level of the defense, they just did what they had to do. I think that Matt Patricia coached circles around Steve Sarkisian in this game. I think Sark coached a little scared. I saw a lot of mentions of training wheels around Arch Manning, which kind of makes his performance a little bit worse if you had the training wheels on and still couldn't exactly get your game off. But I mean, Ohio State, listen, they were outgained by close to 150 yards in this game, right? And they only scored 2 touchdowns. They were limited to less than 2 yards per carry or something like that. They were just more opportunistic. They had another massive stop inside the 5-yard line against Texas for the second in a row. And last year, that's where they made their money too, against teams like Nebraska and Penn State. They cashed in on turnovers when they had to. They bled the clock when they had to. They made the plays when they had to, and Texas didn't. So it came down to Ohio State's defense being the single best unit in this game, and their offense just made the most of the opportunities when they came.
Yeah, the offense made pretty much 2 big plays, right? The big catch by Carnell Tate, and that was essentially the difference maker when you win by a touchdown as far as the offensive side of the ball goes. But I want to keep talking about Matt Patricia, because I think everybody had it in their head when you talked about Ohio State, the fact that they lost a ton of personnel defensively from the national championship team, the fact that they had lost both coordinators on the offensive and defensive side of the football. And while you hear that, everyone thinks of Matt Patricia, the head coach nowadays, mostly because of recency bias. You think Detroit Lions, dumpster fire. What people forget is that he is a 3-time Super Bowl champion as a coordinator. And here he is in a coordinator role once again, doing a fantastic job. I don't think that there's any debate about it after what you saw against Texas on Saturday. And here's another stat to kind of further my point there. Statistically, defense still wins championships. We're in this era of college football, NFL football, where it's about these young, guru, offensive-minded head coaches that are quarterback whisperers and what have you. But statistically, defense is still winning championships. And let me explain a little bit. The last college football national champion to finish outside of the top 10 in total defense was the 2010 Auburn Tigers. That's how long it's been since a team finished outside the top 10 in total defense and won the national championship. And then you continue to go down that hole a little bit and you think, okay, well, what about scoring defense and things like that? And yes, there are, a couple of spots on the page. I bring you to 2019 LSU that allowed a lot of points, and they were able to rely on Joe Burrow, but still just kind of continuing down the line year after year. 2010 Auburn, 53rd in scoring defense, right? This is the same team we're talking about in total defense. 2011 Alabama, number 1. 2012 Alabama, number 1. 2013 Florida State, number 1. 2014 Ohio State, 26. So again, scoring and total defense are a little different. 2015 Alabama, number 3. 2016 Clemson, number 10. 2017 Alabama, number 1. 2017 Clemson, number 1. Or excuse me, 2018 Clemson, number 1. 2019 LSU, like we had mentioned, 32. 2020 Alabama, 13th. 2021 Georgia, number 1. 2022 Georgia, number 5. 2023 Michigan, number 1 in scoring defense. And then last year, Ohio State was in that conversation as well. So again, defense is still winning championships, because look at all of the elite offenses. Jaden Daniels in his Heisman year, Caleb Williams in his Heisman year. They're losing 3 games. They're not competing for a national championship. Ohio State looks like the team to beat now because of how good and how strong that defensive unit looked on Saturday, and who's running the show, and Matt Patricia.
I agree. And it's, again, in this conversation, right? Like, that's why I'm not all of a sudden like backing down on Texas. Like, yes, Texas was held to 7 points, but they held Ohio State to 14 points. And yeah, their offense wasn't great, but this is now the second game in the calendar year 2025 where Jeremiah Smith was a non-factor against this Texas defense. And yeah, I think they could have hit him for a long touchdown on that first or second drive, on the 4th down play action shot. And Texas did a good job of bracketing him and keeping him out of the game. And they still lost again. Like, in these 2 matchups, he has like 4 catches for 35 yards total combined, which is nuts. And the fact that they've lost both these games, it just goes to show you that sometimes it's not just about being the better defense, you also have to be making the most of your opportunities on the other side of the ball. So I think Texas is going to be fine. I mean,
I agree.
I'm impressed with what I saw out of their defense, particularly their front. I think their secondary is still pretty good. You mentioned that Cardinal Tate touchdown being the difference. If he doesn't make a hell of a play, because that pass is broken up. That
Yeah,
pass, it's an underthrown ball and it's broken up and it's not PI or anything like that. If Cardinal Tate doesn't make a play that very few wide receivers in the country can make, are you looking at a 7-7 game going into overtime? And then
sure.
whoever scores a touchdown instead of a field goal winds up winning the game. It's the little things, right? But the little things add up. So I look at Texas and all of the personnel and all of the talent that they have and think they'll be fine. I'm just so impressed with Ohio State's defense and their ability to make the most of every situation that they have. They are 100% going to be the team to beat. Now the target's on them, as if it wasn't already, because they just won the national championship. And now it's like they're going to be number one when the new AP poll comes out, and it'll be a while before they get knocked off that totem pole.
I'm with you. I think last thing I'll say on this game, and I'll say it about Texas, is the fact that they're going to be fine in the sense that this is probably the most complicated defense that they're going to play maybe
Yeah.
all year. Matt Patricia was throwing, you look at the film on this, Matt Patricia was throwing next level NFL type looks at Arch Manning that quite simply he's not going to see the rest of the year. And I know he plays in the SEC, but I simply don't think you're going to see that the rest of the year. And maybe in the playoffs, rematch, whatever. But for the rest of the regular season, I do think it actually gets easier for Arch, and you're going to see him ease into things a little bit. And I believe they have 2 games against non-Power 4 opponents before they play another Power Conference opponent. I'd have to fact check that, but I believe that's what it is. So, again, just something to look out for. Any final thoughts on Texas, Ohio State before we move on?
I'm very pleased with what I saw from Ohio State across the board. I think their offense will be fine as well. Sayin and the rest of those guys are extremely talented. CJ Donaldson, honestly, my player of the game on offense, because that kid, I did not expect him to be the feature back, but he ended up being the feature back, and I think he's going to be one of the better backs in the Big Ten. So interested to see how both of these offenses bounce back from playing, to your point, maybe the hardest defense they'll face all year.
Let's go ahead and talk about this one. Florida State takes down number 8 Alabama inside Doak Campbell Stadium. I don't think anybody had this on their radar. You and I on this show right here took Alabama to cover the 13.5-point spread. How about the Noles? 31-17, the final score. What a statement from Mike Norvell, Tommy Castellanos and company to go out and win this football game and say, like, last year really was a blip on the radar, and we're here to play. And I just think that there's so much to unpack with this, between the things we have to talk about and how we have to look at Florida State now, and the things we have to talk about and how we have to look at the Crimson Tide now as well.
Yes, because we mentioned in the ACC preview when talking about Florida State, like, if anybody can make it work with these ragtag group of transfers, it's got to be Mike Norvell, because we've seen it happen before at multiple different stops. But I could not have foreseen this. I mean, really, okay, am I impressed with Florida State? Absolutely. I think Tommy Castellanos talking all the talk and then walking all the walk is fantastic. I think that's awesome. You can't help but feel good for Florida State after the season they just had, and then now doing this to the team that left them out of the playoff 2 years ago. It's kind of revenge is a dish best served cold. But really, because Florida State, even now, like, you could say they're the 3rd best team in the ACC. And we'll get into those other 2 teams at the top in a moment. But I could not stop thinking when watching this game just how far Alabama has fallen. It was less about Florida State, and I feel bad because Florida State played awesome. It was less about Florida State and more about Alabama. They looked soft. They looked slow. They looked undisciplined. They looked uninterested, and they looked unprepared. Wow. You could maybe say one of those things once a season about any team under Nick Saban. If all 5 of those things were ever true under Saban, you were dreaming. Like, they never looked that poor. And you're now in a situation where they're 5-5 in their last 10 games. They've lost 4 of those games, being double-digit favorites. One of them is a bowl game, so you can throw it out if you want to. But, like, Brian Williams and a lot of other guys were still playing in the game. I'm pretty sure Jalen Milroe played in that game. So looking at this game, there's a couple things that stand out to me. One, Thomas Castellanos on Florida State's first touchdown of this game kind of like wiggled his way to the sideline. And when he was starting to hit the edge, the Alabama linebacker in pursuit stopped running. And Castellanos saw that, dead-legged him, and accelerated to the end zone, final 5 yards for a touchdown. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, yeah, they're not winning this game because you got to finish the play to the whistle. You don't want to get a penalty. I don't know if that's what he was scared of, but what are we doing when there's 3-4 yards of separation between the white line and the quarterback that you're not at least giving him a shove? You're just slowing down and not touching him. Florida State's linemen were pushing around Alabama's front line and their linebackers when they would get to the second level.
Yep.
The corners looked slow. They were getting beat on a lot. I know I got to give a lot of credit to Gus Malzahn. He was doing so much of this pre-snap eye candy that he's kind of known for at this point to get these guys out of place. But again, this is Alabama we're talking about. Like it's such a fall from grace to see them look like this. I could not tell you a single game they played under Saban where I thought they looked this poorly coached. And now it's a trend dating back to last year. And I don't think Ty Simpson was awful. I think he just looked like a lot of other quarterbacks did this week making their first start, like CJ Carr with Notre Dame, who we'll get into later. I just think as a team, this is maybe the worst I've seen Alabama play since before Saban got there. And that's my biggest takeaway is like, what's next? Like, where do you go from here?
Can I make a seriously, seriously bold prediction about the state of Alabama football? My bold prediction, after seeing what you saw against Florida State, knowing the pressure that comes with that job, the expectation that comes with that job, the resources that are supplied in a place like Tuscaloosa to win football games, my bold prediction is that Kalen DeBoer does not make it to the Iron Bowl.
Wow.
And I know the first thing people are going to say, and it's the first thing that you'll probably say, is what about the buyout? And I just think we live in a modern era of collegiate athletics. You saw it with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. That's the biggest example. You saw it with Ed Orgeron at LSU.
Yeah.
Some donor, somebody out there is willing to cough up the coin to make a change. Because Alabama football donors and fans and that community is crazy. And they do not take kindly, not only to losing. It's one thing if they lose the game. It's how they looked doing it. To your point, sloppy. It felt poorly coached at times. But more than anything, they just felt unprepared and physically beat. You can't lose like that. You go out there and you lose a slugfest and it's a close game and the quarterbacks are going at it and you looked good doing it. Fine. Like you lose, and we're going to talk about it. You lose like Notre Dame lost to Miami. Fine. But Alabama got bullied, plain and simple, physically and mentally in that game. And that's my hot take. I think Kalen DeBoer does not make it to the Iron Bowl because it's probably, and I understand it was, to give him devil's advocate, it was the biggest shoes in the history of college football to ever fill.
Yes, but you don't expect the drop-off to be this bad.
That, and on top of it, it makes the leash that much shorter because of where the expectation level is at. And there's also no excuse because on paper, this is one of the most talented teams in the entire country. Like on paper, no question, it has to be a top 5 most talented team at position by position. So there's really no excuse for it.
They have not played a game in the 14 under DeBoer. I stole this stealing stat from Josh Pate. They've not played a game under Kalen DeBoer where they had less penalties than the other team.
That's right. I saw that.
That is absurd. This is Alabama football. And again, the undisciplined part, right? They had like 8 penalties for 70-something yards. Like, when did a Nick Saban team ever have 8 penalties in a game? When did they ever look like they did against Oklahoma last year? Look like they did against Vanderbilt last year? A Saban team would have never allowed Georgia back in that ball game last year. And they would have never in a billion years looked like they did against Florida State. Think about what they did to USC in 2016. Think about what they did to Florida State in 2017. Think about what they did to Louisville in 2018. Like, could Florida State be a contender in the ACC? Absolutely. But I don't think they're that good to make Alabama look that bad. I could be wrong, right? Maybe both of these teams are good, and Florida State's just a buzzsaw. Like we kind of had this idea of
they got
what
the talent
Florida State was 100%. And this kind of reminds me of when they beat LSU in Orlando back in 2023, and that was the first win of 13 in a row before they got smoked by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. But to your point about DeBoer, like, they go to Georgia. They have to play Tennessee. They have to play South Carolina, which is a game I already had them losing. They have to play LSU, and they have to play Oklahoma, who could be stingy, before getting to the Iron Bowl, to your point. So a midseason firing would be unprecedented. But how many of those games are they going to win?
I know.
It's nothing's a given anymore.
No. I do want to take a moment and talk about Florida State. I think I'm higher on Florida State, and you have to try and temper yourself as far as being reactionary after week one. But I am all of a sudden all in on Florida State. And the reason I am is because there's still talent and bodies across from you in this game. You're still looking at 5-star athletes on the other side for Alabama. I just said they're one of the most talented teams in the country. And Florida State looked awesome. Tommy Castellanos looked the part. Like, he was one of the best quarterbacks of the weekend in a pretty weak quarterback weekend, all things considered, right? We talked about it being a pretty defensive weekend all around. I think we need to seriously have a conversation about Florida State contending for the ACC. No question about it. Now, Miami looked really good. Georgia Tech, they went to Boulder and won, and I think we're going to mention that game at the end a little bit. I wasn't super impressed in watching them do it. Like, they won the game. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. It's week one. It's on the road. Boulder was a zoo. It was an awesome atmosphere, a night game. So, like, sometimes you just want to go there and win no matter what. So I don't want to take too much away from Georgia Tech. Louisville, we haven't seen them play a good team yet. I think Louisville's legit. But it's almost like this is so good for the ACC because everybody that we thought was going to be good looked pretty darn good. In fact, I think Miami looked even better than we thought Miami was going to look. 100%. Maybe Clemson not as good as we were hoping they were going to look, but it's week one. And you just essentially added another team to the mix. Beautiful situation to have if you're the ACC.
I agree. I kind of walk away with three main takeaways, which is kind of like the three marks that had to be hit that we talked about if Florida State was going to be an improved team, not just a great team, right? Nobody had this high of an expectation, but if they were to be, a 7 or 8 win team, Castellanos has to look the part. He's got a lot of Jordan Travis in him, man. I think the marriage between him and Malzahn is going to be really exciting to watch. And I think Norvell really likes him.
And you could say a lot of the same things about Gus that we're saying about Matt Patricia.
Right. We have recency bias against them because of how things ended at their previous stops or their last few stops. But the fact of the matter is, in a situation where there's not that much pressure on you, these guys are able to thrive. And I think Malzahn's going to have a good year. If he's going to do that against an Alabama defense, I would hate to see what they have to do when the ACC schedule rolls around. 2, those new receiver additions are legit. And Malzahn is getting them involved in so many different ways that is making them more than just downfield threats. Like, anybody can get the ball on any play and you have to stop them. And then 3, they just looked big. Like, they are pushing guys around defensively up front. The offensive line is doing their thing. They're, again, getting them involved. A lot of pull concepts. The zone concepts were working really well. And when Castellanos has these designed runs, most of the time they are getting good chunks of yardage. So quarterback, check. Receivers, check. Trenches, check. That's all you need to win in this conference. And I think they're going to be able to do it.
I circle this one as the most fascinating game of the weekend. Florida State taking down Alabama, looking really good doing it down in Tallahassee. Let's talk about this one. And this was the marquee game on Saturday night. LSU rolls into Death Valley, Clemson's Death Valley, that is, and takes down Clemson 17-10. Another real defensive slugfest, but LSU looked really good, man. And Brian Kelly gets that monkey off his back. And really, it was an LSU problem because it predated Brian Kelly as well, which was winning the big season opener. And LSU, they looked impressive. I thought Garrett Nussmeier did a lot of really, really good things that doesn't necessarily result in points. I think he was emphatically the better quarterback on Saturday night. I thought Cade Klubnik at times looked stuck, looked like couldn't look off his first read, just was not having his best stuff. And we've seen him be better. But the thing I'll say about those two is Cade Klubnik has not played in very many big games when you really break it down. And we were hoping, we just kind of hoped, we sat here and hoped and thought like, oh, it's Clemson, it's Dabo, he'll be good to go. He's going to snap his fingers and he's going to perform in these big games. But he hasn't really been seasoned to them. Played in the playoffs last year at Texas. That's a big game. And they lost. Played in the ACC championship against SMU last year. That's a big game. And they won. I don't like it's an ACC championship game, but playing against LSU and playing against SMU are two very different things, respectfully.
Exactly. And they played Carolina the year before in the title game, right? And it's like,
and the ACC that you currently play in, like maybe we're getting back there. Maybe Miami's going to be great and Florida State's going to be great and Georgia Tech is in the mix. And all of a sudden we're looking at, okay, this is what the ACC is supposed to be. But the last couple of years, when you look at the ACC, like who was Clemson playing in their conference schedule that you were afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they played a big game against South Carolina in Death Valley last year and lost.
Mm-hmm. They played Georgia to open the season and didn't score a touchdown.
Exactly. So we've yet to see Cade perform in one of these big games. He did look really good in the ACC title game, but they beat an SMU team, barely beat an SMU team that played the most cupcakey ACC schedule of anybody last year. So
yeah, and then got smoked in the playoff.
I was disappointed in what Cade Klubnik showed and maybe what that receiver room that we thought was so. Now, Antonio Williams did seem to be banged up.
That's right.
So that's it. That's something to look out for. But I walk away from this, like, I think Clemson's going to be fine. I think Clemson's a playoff team. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I think LSU's really good. And now I'm taking LSU and I'm putting them where I thought Texas was. I think LSU is the team to beat in the SEC now.
I agree with you. I still, we haven't seen Georgia play a team with a pulse, so I want to wait. Like, I'm really interested to see what happens when Georgia goes to Neyland in 2 weeks.
Yes.
That one's definitely circled on my calendar, but this is everything I've wanted to see out of LSU. I'll say this. The best quarterback performance I saw this weekend was Devin Dampier. The most impressive quarterback performance I saw this weekend was Garrett Nussmeier. I think Nuss played this game like an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
And people might point out, what I've previously said, I think Nuss is going to win the Heisman. I think he's going to be the first pick in the draft. A lot of people on Twitter and YouTube seem to agree with me. Like, he had, it was in the first half, like it was like a third read backside dig for a first down that he hit. I think they wound up missing the field goal anyways, but it was like, that was an NFL progression, 1, 2, 3, hit your backside dig. That throw to Berrien Brown should have been a touchdown. I don't know how on earth they ruled that an incomplete pass. I thought that was, I just am not a fan of that being ruled an incomplete pass, but that was the best throw I saw all weekend. He executed, especially in the second half, like I expected him to, even though it didn't necessarily result in anything crazy. I also think that Joe Sloan in his first game as the offensive coordinator for LSU kind of kept things a little bit too close to the vest. Like, there were so many screens, I lost count. It was insane. But more than Nuss, man, this game is about LSU's defense. All of their transfer portal additions made an impact in one way or another, especially Mansour Delane, who became a household name on Saturday, which is insane because he has 29 career starts in maroon and orange. But good for him, man. I'm very happy for him. Halsey, the transfer from Houston that was not allowed to play in the first half of the game, came in the second half, and Clemson didn't score. Like, he was an absolute force at safety. He was laying the boom on a couple of those Clemson receivers. They were daring them to throw them over the middle. Up front, they looked very stout. Their defensive line limited Clemson to less than like a yard and a half per carry. Harold Perkins finally looked like the
Yes,
Harold
he
Perkins of
did.
2023. He was all over the place. Obviously made the game-winning play on the 4th down for Clemson when they were trying to tie the game. They
How about
looked
the Weeks
amazing.
brothers?
Whit Weeks looked absolutely nuts.
Yep.
I mean, that kid could be first-team All-SEC linebacker. Like, they just had guys at every level step up and make plays against an offense that has a ton of firepower. Like, okay, is Clemson in a situation among the quote-unquote current blue bloods that they get to play the easiest schedules and their offense looks the best? 100% absolutely. But you cannot look at their roster and tell me that it's bad. Like, people are like, oh, they had a converted wide receiver playing running back. Yeah, and he played pretty well. And, you know, we didn't see Gideon Davidson a lot, but like Adam Randall played pretty well. Klubnik looked to kind of like Arch. The only difference is Klubnik's making his 150th career start, and Arch was making his first real career start. So I was looking at it like, why is Klubnik looking so rattled at home in an environment like this? And it's because LSU's defense was doing unbelievable things. Blake Baker could turn out to be the hire of the offseason. And I love what I saw from that unit. I think a guy like Jaden Daniels is sitting at home like, where the hell was this 2 years ago?
Yeah.
But, man, that offense is going to catch up to the defense because Clemson's defense looked legit. I mean, let's be honest. Clemson's defense looks – TJ Parker was flying around the field. Sammy Brown
Clemson
was
had 8
flying.
tackles for loss.
Yeah, I mean, Avion Terrell had that huge hit, forced fumble that was returned.
Yeah.
I think Clemson wound up scoring a field goal off of that one. Like, they looked good on every, and that's why I feel good about Clemson, because their offense will be fine, their defense looked legit. LSU all of a sudden is a top 3 team in the country.
I agree. I 1,000, and it all comes down to the defense, and that was the biggest question mark coming into this year: is could LSU finally put a defense on the field? And we saw it, no question about it. We saw it. I'm excited to see. You know, I think football is better and more refreshing when LSU is in the mix. Like,
I agree.
One
of those programs.
It's just one of those programs that, like Florida, we need Florida to be back there too. Mm-hmm. You know, and as much as I enjoyed disliking Brian Kelly when he was at Notre Dame, I like seeing the LSU brand and Death Valley and all that where it should be. And I think this is the team to beat in the SEC right now. You think Georgia, which is fine, but we're going to have to see Georgia beat somebody in order to be the team to beat, I think. And I get it. They're the defending champs, so maybe they already came into the season with that crown in your brain. But we just saw LSU go on the road against a top 4 team preseason in the country, which I still think Clemson's probably a top 10 team. I do. I do think Clemson's good, and I think Cade's going to be fine. And the more we mentioned it, he hadn't really played in big games. The more you play in them, the more accustomed to them you become. Like, every game's a big game in the SEC. So Garrett Nussmeier and all these quarterbacks in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're used to that. Not every game every week in the ACC feels like a big game. Like, when you're rolling up to Chestnut Hill and it's 52 degrees on a Saturday and raining, and you're playing Boston College, who comes into the game at 4-6, like, that's not the same. It's not the same as going to play last year's South Carolina team, who goes on this run at the end, wins its final 6 games of the regular season, and almost makes it into the playoff.
Yeah, and I think the crowd in Death Valley did their part. That first half was deafening. It was LSU had to use 2 timeouts in the first 10 minutes of the game.
It was bonkers.
They had false starts out the wazoo. They had illegal formations. I texted you about it. I'm like, another game where Brian Kelly doesn't have his guys ready to play. Like, it felt like LSU was not prepared for the moment. But in the second half, they came out and dominated. I
think it says more. Like, think about all the games that they've lost in these season openers, and they're almost always on a neutral site, right? They lost in Vegas to USC. Then they lost. Who'd they lose to last year? It's slipping my brain.
That was USC, and then
that was USC.
Back-to-back years losing to Florida State in Orlando and New Orleans.
Right. Now you're not only did you win the big game, it wasn't neutral site. Let's go meet up in Atlanta or go meet up in New Orleans or whatever. You went to their place and beat Clemson on the road. Like, Clemson doesn't lose. Remember when they had that streak at Death Valley where they didn't lose for
Mhm.
like 10 years or
3
something
years,
preposterous?
yeah.
Yeah. Like it was insane. So I'm high on LSU. I don't not like at the end of the day, like kind of like with Texas, like Ohio State beat them by a touchdown. Okay. Like
Yep.
Texas had the ball at the goal line. They score there. It's, we're looking at a completely different game. Like Clemson lost by a touchdown. It's not like they got blown out. They're gonna be all
Right,
right. This is
right,
light years away from getting blown out by Georgia in the season opener a year ago.
right. And
So
I'm just so pleased with LSU's defense. But again, it's like, dude, these offenses are still going to be fine. Nussmeier, big thing for me, looked like a pro, didn't throw a pick. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. And then Barry and Brown was not really a part of the game plan. Nick Anderson, I don't even think had a catch.
yeah,
Aaron Anderson was a dog. I think he's going to be their one. But I'm so excited to see what the potential of this team is. I'm praying, because I'm with you on LSU. I've always had a soft spot for them. I'm praying that this doesn't become the patented Brian Kelly screws it up in October and November, because they have sky high potential.
you and me both. Let's talk about one final marquee matchup from week one, and then we'll just kind of mention some games and some things that stood out at the tail end here. But we had a banger last night. Miami takes down Notre Dame in Hard Rock Stadium 27-24. Felt like a game in which really the Canes did control all the way throughout. I mean, there was never a point where they didn't lead. Notre Dame never led in the game. So Miami takes down Notre Dame. We both took Notre Dame. In fact, I was really high on Notre Dame and I wasn't sold on Miami. And to Mario Cristobal's credit and to Carson Beck's credit and to everybody's credit there in Coral Gables, they heard the noise and they shut it up pretty quick, because Carson Beck looked like his 2023 self. He looked like the guy that we were talking about as a first-round pick in the National Football League. His pocket presence was like off the charts. His ability to navigate the pocket last night and zip it around and make strong throws was so impressive to me. And then another big question mark for Miami was, oh, they lost all this production on offense. You lost your top 7 leading receivers, or whatever the exact number was. I think it was the top 7. That receiver room's good. They're all right.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that one-handed catch from the kid that transferred from LSU. Like, that receiving room played up to par. And then it was the trenches, man. Miami compete. Notre Dame is one of those brands that is with the SEC and the Big Ten in the trenches. Like, that's why they made it to the national championship last year, because they can compete with you on the offensive, defensive line of scrimmage, right? And last night, Miami was the better team there. And I don't know that we've seen Miami be the better team at that spot in a while, man. Like, even last year, particularly the defensive line wasn't there. And then even the offensive line, like elite offense at every skill position. I don't know that Miami's O-line was, anything to write home about a season ago.
No.
And we saw them push Notre Dame all over the field. We saw Miami tote the rock. We saw their running back room excel yesterday. And quite simply, that offensive line looks like it could compete for a national championship. I was really impressed with Miami. And last big note is Hard Rock was rocking for the first time really since they played each other in 2017. Last time we got Catholics versus Convicts. And I miss the Orange Bowl, man. It'll never be the same as the Orange Bowl. I wish that Miami had a stadium on campus. It's just, I don't like when they play, like, it's an NFL stadium for a reason. It's an hour from Coral Gables, where Miami's campus is. The stadium's in Miami Gardens. But last night it was rocking, and the Canes faithful were out in full effect. And it felt like the U should, like all the celebs on the field, like Michael Irvin, Ray Lewis, like you name it, they were there flashing up the U. And like, it felt like Miami's back. So, but we know they get off to these hot starts. Can they sustain it?
Yeah, dude, Hard Rock was absolutely lit. I mean, the students showed up, to their credit, in a monsoon. Like, we got lucky that it didn't pour rain the way it did pregame, because it was like the videos I was seeing from like the tailgating scene were insane.
Yeah.
So credit to the students for showing up, credit to everybody for showing up, man. When CJ Daniels made that one-handed catch and goes over to the sideline and Michael Irvin is pumping him up, how can you not get the chills? Like, that was That was so dope. I Miami, Florida State, two biggest overachievers of week one. For two different reasons. Like, we kind of knew Miami had this potential, but what you said really encapsulates it perfectly. The thing I'm most impressed about, man, they bullied Notre Dame up front, and you don't just do that. Ohio State couldn't really do it last year. I mean, they did for spurts, but then like Notre Dame's able to catch up. And yeah, Notre Dame was able to catch up down the stretch in this game, but it never felt in doubt. Part of that was CJ Carr, but like, do I think Beck played a tremendous game? No. I think he got away with one. CJ Daniels bailed him out on that one-hander. Should have
I
been a
will
pick,
say that wasn't a great throw. It was a terrific catch, not a great throw.
Right. So like, you get away with that decision. That's 7 points at the end of the half. And then they scored another touchdown coming out of the half. That's really your difference in the game right there, is the fact that they were able to double dip. Really, that first drive of the second half was a statement, man. They ate up half the quarter. They just went, meet me right. They were like Max Holloway. They're like, meet me right here and try to beat me. And they're the ones who got knocked out. It was insane. I did not expect Malachi Toney to have this big of an instant impact. I know people have talked out of that camp about, we got our own 17-year-old who can do crazy things. Forget about Ryan Williams. He looked like a 5-year pro. Like, he looked unguardable. He was effective in space. He could shake defenders. He was running these there was a first down conversion that, like, Greg McElroy pointed out, that he ran this little whip route and he just completely shakes free of his guy, like 5 yards of separation, easy first down. He's going to be an absolute weapon for them. And he's just 17. Like, it's absurd. They've obviously got those two good backs. Fletcher, I think, had a pretty good game for them.
Was good.
But man, up front, they just looked huge. Maui Goa was a wall. And then on the defensive side, Ruben Bain had an unbelievable game. So again, I leave this kind of the opposite of the Florida State game, right? I feel this feeling better about Miami than feeling bad about Notre Dame. 100%. CJ Carr, obviously, the moment was a little bit too big for him.
He made a nice play on that touchdown.
He did, but you're not going to get away with that all the time.
No.
That was the old no, yes touchdown. Clearly very jittery. He had like a couple of those intentional groundings that was just like, bro, you got to relax.
Yeah.
But it's similarly, and it's funny, right? Like, Mike Denbrock leaves LSU. Joe Sloan fills in for him, and it felt like his play calling was a little scared. Mike Denbrock goes to Notre Dame, and it feels like his play calling was a little scared as well. A lot of screens, a lot of stuff at the line of scrimmage. They said something in the first half that CJ Carr didn't have an attempt past the sticks. Like that's nuts. You got to let your guy rip it. He's clearly talented enough to be the starting quarterback. And then, not his fault, but the interception that allowed Miami to go up 2 possessions late in the game.
The triple bobble.
Like, that's not Carr's fault. I actually blame that on Mike Denbrock, because you've called that play, that screen, about 1 billion times. It's only a matter of time before the opposing defense catches up to it, and Ruben Bain makes a great play, kind of snatching the ball out of the air. For me, about Notre Dame in this game, man, looking a little small. Maybe not looking small, but just getting pushed around too easily. And in that same vein, Jeremiah Love was a non-factor. Just a complete non-factor.
That was the point I was getting ready to make, was that was maybe what impressed me about Miami the most, more than anything, was that they held Jeremiah Love in check. 10 carries, 33 yards.
That's nuts. Four carries in the first half. And like, Jadarian Price had a really nice game. Like, he ripped off that really the big run to set up a touchdown in the fourth quarter. But you have the best running back in college football and a quarterback making his first career start, a freshman, on the road in what had become a tough environment where the moment was clearly big for him. They were speculating on the broadcast that maybe he was dealing with something. He wasn't even getting a lot of snaps, to be honest with you. Like, the player with the most carries for Notre Dame was CJ Carr. That should never be the case when you have Jeremiah Love in the backfield. So is there more than meets the eye there? Maybe. I know they wanted to get their receivers involved because, like, they brought in Malachi Fields for a reason, and he was really a big focal point of that offense. Jordan Faison made a lot of nice plays after the catch too, but like the offense has to go through number 4, and why it didn't is strange, but I won't be concerned about it unless it becomes a pattern.
I 100% agree. The one thing I'll say about Notre Dame that I was impressed with was, like that team's not going to quit, right? Like the resilience, like that Marcus Freeman led bunch showed a lot of resilience to, I mean, they tied the game. Yeah. And to Miami's credit, they went and won it. Like there was a point in time where I thought the game was over and I didn't think Notre Dame had a shot to even tie it. And then Notre Dame's ability to come back in the game, tie the game, they showed a ton of grit and resilience down the home stretch of that second half.
I texted a coworker who's a Notre Dame fan when Miami came out of the half, scored that touchdown. Again, just a statement drive, just bullied them. And I said, it's not just that this game is over. This could get ugly. And
it didn't.
Notre Dame outscored them 17 to 3, 6 down the stretch. Obviously, no moral victories or pats on the back, but like Marcus Freeman is a tremendous head coach who's catching a lot of flack this morning and last night. I don't think he deserves it. Clearly, this team has some figuring out to do. They lost to what appears to be a very good Miami team. He's a terrific coach. You're right. They're never going to be out of it. They're always going to fight to the end. And I mean, dude, if that field goal narrowly went in at the end of the game last night, if it hooks out, we could have a different conversation this one. Then the conversation is another choke by Mario
Cristobal. Exactly. And on top of it too, like I think quarterbacks are so important in college football. And you had, though it was his first game at a new place, you had a seasoned vet who's played in every big game you could think of in Carson Beck versus a kid making his first start in CJ Carr. Like that, if you just want to look at it from bird's eye view, 1,000-foot level, that could be the difference. Like if you don't want to talk about the trenches and the X's and O's and whatnot, like that's the difference. Seasoned vet at quarterback who's played in every big game you can imagine to first time starter. I mean,
look, think about all of the quarterbacks in that we talked about that made their first start. None of them looked good.
No.
Arch didn't. Sayan didn't. Ty Simpson didn't. And now CJ Carr didn't. And I think to your point, that's so important because who are the guys that they lost to? I mean, the Texas game is a bit of a wash, but Castellanos, multi-year starter. Beck, multi-year starter. Nussmeier and Klubnik's also a wash, but either way you go, like, Nussmeier being in those big games, like you said, was, God bless you.
Thank you.
A difference maker. So it's important, man. It's so important.
It is. You literally, the one thing you cannot manufacture is experience. And nothing can make up for experience. I'm a big believer in that. Before we wrap up the show, any other games worth noting? Like Tennessee takes down Syracuse, looked really good on offense doing it. I was surprised Syracuse was able to score 26 points on Tennessee. So maybe Tennessee's defense isn't what it was last year, at least in week 1, because Syracuse scored 26, right? But they also went for 2 twice. So there was opportunities for points there. Could have been 28. And then there was a situation late in the game where you're like forced to go for a touchdown rather than a field goal. If you take the points and the game's closer at that point, you're talking probably somewhere around 28, 31 instead of 26, right? Like whatever. Not that it matters. I was surprised that Tennessee allowed 31 points, but Joey Aguilar kind of hooped and Tennessee ran the ball really effectively for like 250 yards on Syracuse. And that just set things up for Joey Aguilar to be successful. And he did. Like we said, he had a turnover problem. No, he went out there and threw for, I want to say 2 touchdowns and did not have a pick. He looked really good. And I think that Tennessee might be all right. And then the other one is South Carolina getting this defensive dogfight against Virginia Tech. They score on their scripted opening drive, like with ease. And we were like, holy smoke, Virginia Tech's about to get run out of the building. And to Tech's credit, they hung in there on defense big time, and they made things difficult for Sellers, and they were getting that offense for South Carolina off the field, and things unraveled, and special teams touchdown, Beamer ball, what have you. I think maybe Tennessee, all right, that offense was a little better than I was expecting them to be. Defense, And then South Carolina, I'm like, that offense showed a lot of glimmers, like the long ball and that opening drive and whatnot, but like, need to see more out of there was a lot of drop passes by the receiving room, and that was a question mark going into the year. Like, what does Lenoris have to throw the ball to? And then that South Carolina defense looked good, but what is Virginia Tech's offense? So those were like two of the marquee games. Georgia Tech goes and beats Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Hostile environment in Boulder, like we had mentioned. Haynes King runs the ball 20 times. Like, I don't know if the guy's going to make it to the second weekend in October at this rate. If, like, I don't know why they choose to do that, because you've seen the last 2 years that he doesn't get through the season when you choose to do that. Like, your body just can't take that. I don't know why they decide, like, yep, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it is broke, and you're physically breaking him. His wear and tear on the video game is bright red across his entire body. I don't know why they're choosing to do that, but if they play like that, they could probably win a lot of games. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. And you liked Utah. Utah looked good.
Yeah, they were a little old classic Pac-12 after dark. Utah, UCLA, 11 o'clock kickoff at the Rose Bowl. Big 12 versus Big 10. My behind. That's Pac-12 after dark. I mentioned it briefly earlier. Devin Dampier was the most impressive quarterback I saw in college football this week, or the best performer I saw. Quick, accurate, decisive from the pocket. Got out of the pocket, threw on the run brilliantly. Was the team's leading rusher when they designed running him. Like, if you thought Thomas Castellanos played well, Dampier had his performance on steroids. Granted, UCLA, I mean, I just have no idea what they are. And Nico Iamaleava was bad and so on and so forth. But, like, combine what I saw from Utah and what we've seen from Kansas State, which is a loss in Ireland and damn near losing to FCS North Dakota on Saturday. I think Utah is now that team up there with Arizona State in the Big 12 moving forward, which is great because I always thought if Dampier played well that they could get there. He is a very exciting player to watch, and they brought over his coach from New Mexico as well. So I'm fascinated to see what that looks like this season. To your point about Tech, man, like, I know a lot of people feel this way that, like, oh, another game that the Hokies gave away. They were not the better team in that game. No. It's not like so many games last year where they were like, yeah, Tech was a better team in that game. Like, they really weren't. They deserved to lose. Shot themselves in the foot too many times. Down the stretch, just kind of unraveled. They were out-coached. I thought that their defense was, for the most part, very promising. Their defensive front looks deep. They look big. They look strong. I think that's going to be the strong suit for the team. And I thought that their wide receivers played really well, man. Yeah. You can go down the line and everybody made a play. But to your point, drops, penalties, execution, it's just coaching, man. Like, I had a tweet yesterday where I was like, Tech is in a position where they could be winning this game, but they can't. Coaching won't let them get out of their own way. In other news, it's Groundhog Day. Like, this is just what we've seen under this coaching staff. But the defensive coordinator hire of Sam Cephas looks like a home run.
Yeah.
Offensive coordinator hire of Philip Montgomery remains to be seen. So we'll obviously talk about Tech more as the season goes along. I did mention Kansas State. I'm a little bit concerned about them, but I mean, they honestly should be fine as the season progresses. But yeah, that's honestly about it. I think Utah and Florida State are my biggest jumpers. Like, team, because, like, I do my own top 25. Right. I keep track of it on a week by week basis. I had Utah like fringe ranked and Florida State unranked. Now I have them both in my top 20. There you go. I think those two are going to be maybe the biggest risers across the national landscape.
Where you got Florida State?
Let me pull it up. I have my spreadsheet right here. I have Florida State at 19. Okay. And I have Alabama at 15, and I know people are like, what, they just played each other? And I'm like, yes, but it's just deeper than that. Like, it's more nuanced than if X beats Y, you have to put X above Y. The difference is this is week 1, and you can't say, what about the games they played against these guys? Because it's all we've seen. But, like,
I would agree with you if it was a close game, but Florida State crushed it.
It feels like the sky is falling in Tuscaloosa. It's like Chicken Little. The first hexagon has fallen out of the sky. But until the other hexagons start fall, I just need to see it repeatedly. Like, week 1 could be anything from definitive to a complete smokescreen. So for reference, Alabama 15, Florida State 19. I have Utah 13. They look legit. So
that's crazy. Utah beat UCLA and Florida State beat Alabama, and you have Utah ranked higher. Bro. You're overthinking it.
Maybe I am, honestly. Maybe I'm trying to be smarter than I actually am because I'm not.
I think if Florida State and Utah played tomorrow, I like Florida State on a neutral field. What's the model say?
I bet Florida State would be like a 6.5 point favorite in that game.
Exactly. Last one, Boise State got smoked by USF, which I did not expect. But that's looking good for our pick of UNLV winning the Mountain West and getting into the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage in the game, I don't really know who's going to represent the Group of Five in the playoff. Jake Retzlaff looked fine against who did they play? Northwestern,
right?
For Tulane. UNLV has played 2 games against like made up opponents, so I know that Sam Houston is a member of the Conference USA, but that's like they're in like their second or third year in the FBS, I should say, and they had to escape FCS Idaho State, so. Not sure what to make of any of these Group of 5 teams right now, but Boise, man, they've got some soul searching to do. But at USF, Byron Brown looks legit. Like that kid's a load to bring down. So keep your eye on USF.
Maybe USF, maybe the Bulls. All right. Well, this has been fun. Week 1 was awesome. Lived up to the hype. Later this week, we're going to talk some NFL because, believe it or not, NFL kicks off this weekend on Thursday night, and we have to preview the NFC. So we did the AFC. Go check that out. We're going to do the NFC. So as you know, we're doing college football, NFL all season long. You can find it right here. Go follow us on social media. You can find it. Got It Covered FB. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Throwing out a ton of content. And if you like the show, tell your friends. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends, hey, you got to check this out. We were featured in a game day hype up for an actual college, which was unreal. Like we were like, a friend sent it to us. They're like, holy crap, it's you. Now we were talking poorly about the team and they were using it as like hype. But think about the names that were on there. It was Paul Feinbaum, Josh Pate, and us. We don't belong on that list, but thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate it. If they played us on the TVs in the locker room, then by God, I'm glad I'm not there. Yeah.
Find your bulletin board material on Got It Covered. Like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, goodness.
But for Raza Umarani, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long. We'll see you next time.